product and technology over the past year. From my understanding, Josh asked me to advise because of my previous work as the CTO of Block, where I created Cash App and became a bit of a mobile payments expert. For this brief presentation, I'm going to share a peek into the world of mobile payments and what I'm bringing to MobileCoin. Let's call it my post-interview. Back in 2009, I worked on the Android team at Google in charge of the code that underlied the applications layer. We had just wrapped up development on the third and fourth Android phones, the Nexus One and the Droid, when my friends Jack Dorsey and Jim McKelvey reached out to me about their new startup, Square. There I was, enjoying building the most used operating system in the world and the technology behind green text messages, when Jim showed me something that really blew my mind and overlapped with another problem I was solving in my free time. You see, back then, camera phones didn't have built-in flashes, and the connectivity options were limited. As an avid photographer and hardware enthusiast who happened to be working on Android at the time, I planned to connect a flash to my phone's headset jack using a rectifier circuit. Simple. Well, then the Nexus One shipped with a built-in flash, and my side project went in the dustbin. But my experience prepared me for what came next. When Jim McKelvey showed me a credit card reader plugged into the headset jack on his iPhone, I was enthralled, and not just from a technical standpoint. Jim was a small business owner, just like my mom, who was a retired newspaper editor and an antique shop owner. I had seen firsthand how the credit card processors preyed on her small business, making it next to impossible for her to turn a profit. At Square, I saw I could make life better for my mom and millions like her. I went home that night and I wrote code for Square to record swipes on Android. It was quite the resume cover letter. Square offered me a job and I accepted. I started at Square at the beginning of the mobile-first revolution, but also in the wake of the 2007 financial crisis. We made it our mission to liberate small businesses and consumers from traditional payment processes. Getting their money now, not later, is critical to more than half the Americans who live paycheck to paycheck, and those who support family members across the world. I was working on the Square app in 2010 when I had a crazy idea. What if I flipped the model? Rather than give your credit card to a merchant and swipe on their device, you could swipe or key your card on your own device and send the payment to another Square user anywhere in the world. We prototyped this yet-to-be-named idea. However, we soon ran into some complications, namely high card processing fees. So we ended up deprioritizing the project, but the seeds were planted for future work on peer-to-peer, aka P2P payments, that is payments between consumers, peers, your friends or family members, as opposed to a business. 2.5 years later, at the beginning of 2013, inspiration for P2P stuck once again. To start the new year off right, the Square team volunteered in the neighborhood around our headquarters in Soma, cleaning up the streets, etc. During this break from routine, Jack brought up the possibility of sending Square payments via email. At the time, I was personally dealing with PayPal holding on to my money for over a month, and I was constantly forgetting to go to the ATM to get enough cash for the babysitter. Once a week, I found myself at a corner store paying $6 fees at a barely functioning ATM. With Jack's idea, I'd be able to email a unique Square address and transfer funds immediately. And just my luck, new email sender verification tech would make it easier to spot bogus requests. I immediately got to work. 2 weeks after the initial conversation with Jack, I'd coded and launched a fully functional prototype of what we called SquarePay. Before launch, Jack suggested we rename it to Square Cash, alluding to its speed and ease of use. Speaking of names, funny story, Square didn't come up with the name Cash App. The community started referring to Square Cash as Cash App, and the team rolled with it, and then the rest is history. Let me introduce you to the details of Cash App with a bit of ancient history. Remote encrypted peer-to-peer payments go back to 1872, when Western Union launched its wire transfer business using their telegraph network. The sender would pay the intended funds, plus a fee, to their local Western Union office. The operator would wire instructions over to the recipient's local office using Morse code. The recipient could come pick up the released funds with a password. This was crypto payments in 1872. And crazy enough, it's not so different from how Western Union, still the #2 payments company in the world after PayPal, operates today, 150 years later. We've made a lot of progress in the field of mobile payments, but there's a lot left to be done to finally overcome this 19th century way of thinking. Namely, it hinges on middlemen hosting and approving transactions at every step. In 1872, those were operators at Western Union. Today, it's a nearly inscrutable hierarchy of banks, processors, clearinghouses, governments, and other institutions embedded into our financial system. Throughout my years at Square, I challenged the existence of these interlopers in peer-to-peer payments. I'll now give you a quick overview of my success at eliminating some of the barriers and instead building bridges between consumers and their own money. I'm not the most patient person, though I've learned to fake it really well for the benefit of my loved ones. And my impatience isn't all bad. It inspires me to find new ways to do things. It came in especially handy when I was working on bank transfers for Cash App. I initially assumed that I'd use ACH to debit and credit bank accounts, much like Venmo and PayPal were doing at the time. Plaid didn't exist yet, so companies relied on random test deposits to verify accounts, which can take a few business days to complete. You might remember confirming those 1 or 30-cent deposits when you set up your Venmo account. This was neither good for me nor my Cash App. Waiting a few days for verification deposits simply doesn't cut it in a mobile-first world. Obsessed with finding a better user experience, I landed on trying debit cards as a bridge to bank accounts. Until 2011, debit cards had pretty high fees. Transferring something like $2,000, say for rent, could cost $50. This was the sort of hurdle that derailed my peer-to-peer payment efforts in 2010, but there was some transformational progress in this area in the meantime. I gave a few talks at the Federal Reserve over the years, during which time I encountered something called the 2011 Durbin Amendment. It's a piece of legislation that capped debit card fees at 25 cents per transaction, among other consumer-friendly improvements. With fees now down to a quarter, debit cards were a clear winner over the slow and burdensome ACH network, at least from a user experience perspective. My next challenge, figuring out how to get money back into the bank account. With help from my friend Suresh, who's actually here today, his daughter Mira is in the audience. He was an ex-Googler and a bank owner. I investigated a few options for getting the toothpaste back into the tube, so to speak. We tried pushing payments through the PIN debit networks. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's what ATMs use. But only a small percentage of banks supported that transaction type. The debit card-based customer experience was too good. I had to find a solution. Finally, I thought of a little-known card network transaction called an unlinked refund. It was introduced to our team during a Starbucks RFP. You know how a normal credit card refund works. When you return an item, the merchant can send the funds back to the card you used for the original purchase. The network returns the fees to the merchant too, but in contrast to a standard refund, a lesser-known transaction called an unlinked refund lets you return the money to a different card than was originally charged. What if we didn't have the original charge, I thought? Could I use unlinked refunds to send money to bank accounts? I tried it, and it worked. With special permission from our processor, Chase Payment Tech, we were able to implement this unconventional pathway within Cash App for the duration of our pilot. I was so excited for people to experience the magic of Cash App. You see, when a new user received a payment, all they had to do was type in their debit card number, and poof, they're signed up and able to send payments too. One-step sign up. With our linked refund hack, we eliminated those pesky ATM runs, misplaced checkbooks, and digging for change in the junk drawer. With so much added convenience built in just 2 weeks, the obvious question surfaced: why can't we use this flow for all types of payments? Eager to revolutionize payments even further, I approached Visa and MasterCard with a proposal. If they would allow us to use unlinked refunds to push money through debit cards to customer bank accounts, the card networks could charge for these transactions and get access to all the data that was going over the ACH networks. Of course, they loved it. I even got special permission to continue using unlinked refunds until they added official support for push payments. Funny story. This worked out great because, like normal refunds, unlinked refunds returned the transaction fees too. But in our case, there was no original transaction, so we weren't actually charged any fees in the first place. In other words, how much did the transactions cost Cash App during the first year? Nothing. It was a wash. Made it easy to provide the service for free. Shortly after launch, one of the big 3 banks even actually tried to shut us down for using unlinked refunds without originating transactions. But Visa, because we'd set up that partnership ahead of time, stepped in and stopped them. Testimony to the importance of aligning interests with key partners, a lesson that you can see we apply here at MobileCoin today. That functionality I pushed card companies to build is now known, as some of you may know, as Visa Direct and MasterCard Send. Both of these are used worldwide for payments of all sorts: payroll, remittances, insurance payouts, and we're going to use them here at MobileCoin. When you sign up for an Uber driver, you get paid through the debit card. It's funny to think it all started out with a simple hack born out of impatience. I hope this quick overview of my steps to build Cash App's core technology gives you a sense of how complex sending money back and forth is, and how ready the space is for further innovation. Of course, there have been some incredible developments in the past decade that can't be understated, and none have shaken the payments world quite like cryptocurrency, MobileCoin especially. Now that I'm at MobileCoin, we'll continue the mission I started with Cash App, to make payments better for everyone by finding inefficiencies, exploring underused functionalities, and legitimizing new methods of payments with the world at large. Before long, our users will be able to load their wallets using Apple Pay, send some Mo via their favorite encrypted messenger, and then optionally convert back to fiat, all with a few taps. And beyond these passive inquiry and great new features, we're aiming to lift the entire world into a new era of financial freedom and help combat the growing financial inequality crisis. Just a few to-dos. Here are 4 areas where I see MobileCoin transforming payments similarly to how Square did a decade ago. 1, speed. It's common to hear people criticize Web3 solutions for their architectural complexity compared to the more centralized Web2 counterparts. How many people have heard somebody do that? A lot. But have you actually ever seen the architecture behind credit card payments? A credit card payment happens in 2 distinct steps. A payment authorization, which sets aside money in real time, in an escrow, so to speak. And then there's a settlement, which actually commits the transaction and moves the money. And it goes from bank to bank to bank. And it's a process that can take days to complete. With MobileCoin, the money moves directly in real time. As Josh said, under 5 seconds. The blockchain really simplifies things. We no longer need intermediaries to hold on to our money while it moves along. Money transfers from one person to another directly. When no one else touches your money along the way, much of the regulations we've traditionally needed to protect consumers simply go away. We don't need them anymore. 2, security. In the wake of the 2016 election, Cambridge Analytica admitted to running machine learning algorithms against your Facebook likes. The societal consequences of how this information was deployed is incalculable, from serving people disinformation, hi Renee, to underpinning creepy predictive advertising. Thus, imagine what banks and card processors and everyone they sell your data to, including Facebook, can learn about you. It's not entirely grim, but it's an invasion of privacy we don't realize that we're signing up for. For example, your payment details show a merchant's location, which is also your location. So your credit card companies and banks can sell your location information to data aggregators, which are doing just the sort of predictive analysis Cambridge Analytica was doing. This is why I shop online. Encryption is key to locking down your personal data. Unlike card payments and existing peer-to-peer platforms like Cash App, MobileCoin encrypts your data end to end, just like encrypted messengers do for your conversations. With financial data security more important than ever, developing end-to-end encrypted payment technology isn't just smart, it's our responsibility. 3, cost. In the world of moving money, the F word is fee, F-E-E, fee. They're everywhere, and they're getting passed up and downstream between businesses, banks, and consumers invisibly. Here's one of them. Merchants are charged a different, I don't know if you guys know this, merchants are charged a different rate depending on a customer's card type. A Visa Rewards card, for example, actually costs 50% more to a merchant than a normal Visa credit card. Orders of magnitude more than a Visa debit card, thanks to the Durbin Amendment, which we mentioned before. American Express card holders are acutely aware of this, as are UK-based Visa card holders right now, who are currently banned from Amazon due to a lockup between the companies over fees. Merchants pass these costs on to consumers in the end. This means people who predominantly use cash or debit cards, people who aren't offered rewards cards, end up subsidizing the rewards for the Chase, Sapphire, Platinum, Reserve, Diamond preferred cardholders. I think MobileCoin can finally put an end to the racket that is merchant subsidized card rewards. Finally, inclusivity. Cash App made its name by serving the underbanked, but it's still heavily dependent on institutional banking. We still need solutions for the unbanked, who make up the majority of the world's adult population. A few slides ago, I mentioned that Western Union is the second largest payments company in the world, and that's because they connect the unbanked people internationally. According to the World Bank, 1.7 billion adults remain unbanked, Yet 2/3 of them own a mobile phone that could help them access financial services. That's where MobileCoin steps in. We aim to build a payments platform that will be accessible to anyone with a mobile phone. No bank account, no waiting in line to send MoneyGrams needed. Once unbanked people have access to the basic tools of a functioning economy, direct deposits, loans, digital payments, all stuff we take for granted, their financial handicap is seriously reduced. They'll not only catch up to the rest of the developed world, they could surpass us as we'll still be relatively dependent on traditional banking. That's the power of MobileCoin.